Welcome to Martian Mixed Martial Arts.
Wow. Wouldn't it be crazy if the aliens manufactured you to be a mixed martial arts fighter? They're like, let's see if we could just turn this
I'm
dude
sure
into a bad
I'm sure
motherfucker."
if it would have happened, I would have been much better than this.
Much better than this. You're the fucking champion. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
but if I would be alien manufacturer, I would be Superman.
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious beings tuning into the podcast. I welcome you to episode 47 of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. This week we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC on ESPN Plus card coming up on Saturday, February 2nd, 2019, going down in Fortaleza, Brazil. At the end of the program, we will also be recapping the UFC on ESPN Plus 1 event, headlined by TJ Dillashaw versus Henry Cejudo. Also be recapping the Bellator 214 event, and discussing the recent John Jones drug test failure again, and the suspensions of Khabib and Conor for the UFC 229 incident. So we will be analyzing and predicting this week's card coming up first, and then we will be transitioning to last week's card, the Bellator card, and the recent events in the world of mixed martial arts. But starting things off in Fortaleza, Brazil, this Saturday, February 2nd. This card is getting an early start, and the prelims are starting at 5 p.m. and the main card kicks off at 8 p.m. So the fight should wrap up around 11 p.m. That'll be a nice little change. And all 13 fights will be taking place on ESPN 13 for this card. So we're going to start things off in the flyweight division. We have Magomed Bibulatov, who is 14-1, taking on Rogerio Bontorin, who is also 14-1. The betting line for this one opened up looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5 dimes. We have Bibulatov minus 405 as the favorite and Bontorin at plus 285 as the dog. Now we see Bibulatov at minus 470 with Bontorin up to plus 375. So even more action coming in on Bibulatov even as the heavy favorite. And I'm gonna disagree with this one a little bit. I think this line is set a little bit too high. I think I would cap Bibulatov right around minus 300. He is going to be, I believe, the better fighter in the octagon. He has a little bit of suspect defense, though. He got caught by John Moraga in their fight, another fight where he was a huge 5-1 favorite and ended up getting that huge upset in that fight. So he's definitely not a perfect fighter. He's got a little bit of defense issues and maybe even chin problems, and he does not check leg kicks too well either, Bibulatov. So, but he does have good takedowns and some good ground game. He is, he does have good striking despite his, suspect defense. He is a pretty well-rounded mixed martial arts fighter, and I think he should be the favorite. But I just really can't trust him all the way down to minus 470. His opponent, Rogerio Bontorin, is making his UFC debut in this one. He did have a bout on the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series where he beat Gustavo Gabriel by rear naked choke in a pretty impressive fight. However, he was rocked pretty badly in that fight. He was dropped with the right hand and luckily ended up recovering, taking his opponent down and finishing him a few minutes later. But nevertheless, we saw that his defense and his chin are both suspect in this one. So both of these guys, I think, are a bit chinny. They're a bit, their defense is a bit spotty. So I could see one of them, catching the chin in this one. But I definitely would not trust Bibulatov all the way at minus 470. If I had to pick something on this one, I would, go with fight doesn't go the distance at plus money or the under at plus 175. So those are both decent lines there. So the pick is going to be Bibulatov in this one. Moving on to the next fight in the bantamweight division, we have Ricardo Ramos taking on Said Nurmagomedov. The betting line for this one opened up looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5 dimes. Said Nurmagomedov as the minus 185 favorite. Ricardo Ramos as the plus 145 dog. The line has since flipped. Ramos now minus 140, and Nurmagomedov up to plus 170. I'm gonna agree with the line movement in this one. Pretty crazy opening line, considering how these two gentlemen's UFC careers have started. Saeed Nurmagomedov on one hand, looking really lackluster in his debut, winning a split decision over Justin Scoggins, a highly disputed decision in that one. A lot of people thought Scoggins won that fight. I watched it this week, and I agree he did. Scoggins was, really using his kick game, had a really good range going on, and Nurmagomedov looked pretty sloppy with his takedowns. He did not look like he had, much going on the feet. He just wouldn't really set his takedowns up at all. He would just be grasping from a really far distance. But he did get one takedown in that fight, and I think he did, hold position pretty well for that time being. So he does have good top control if he can get it. But his opponent, Ricardo Ramos, has very good takedown defense, and he's got some, good get-up skills once he gets taken down. He was taken down by Kang in his last fight, and he was able to pop back up to his feet pretty quickly in that one. I think Ramos will be the better striker in this matchup. He just looks more comfortable. Saeed is very awkward on the feet and just really doesn't have much technique, honestly. So I think Ramos will be the better striker. I think he'll be able to stuff the takedowns, and I'm going to see Ricardo Ramos getting a decision win in this one. Moving on to the next fight in the featherweight division, two gentlemen making their UFC debuts. We have Geraldo de Freitas, who is 11-4, taking on Felipe Corrales, who is 8-0, or it's Colares, Felipe Colares. The betting line for this one opened up at, just looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5 dimes. Geraldo de Freitas minus 135. Felipe Colares at minus 105. Since then, the line is now de Freitas minus 130. Felipe Colares at plus 110. So two gentlemen making their UFC debut in this one. So not much footage on these two gentlemen. Pretty hard to come by. Maybe one or two of their full fights on YouTube, but just a lot of highlights, and kind of hard to get a good sense of where these gentlemen are in their career. But I did my best and did a little bit of research. So what I came up with is de Freitas has a nice jab going for him. He's got some good takedowns and some good takedown defense, but his striking is, besides the decent jab, he doesn't have much going. He's got some pretty suspect defense, and that could be exposed, except for his opponent. Colares has pretty sloppy striking as well, and he's another ground specialist. I think both of these gentlemen are specialized in their jiu-jitsu games, so it'll be interesting to see where this fight plays out. I think that they're both going to be super sloppy and swinging on the feet, so they could really connect with one another and go for a knockdown or knockout on the feet. But I think this fight will end up on the ground. It'll have some good scrambles. And it's really, really tough to make a pick because, like I said, I watched the footage on them. I wrote some notes down on them, but honestly, I can't really picture these two gentlemen in my head right now because we haven't really seen them in that UFC octagon yet. So I guess the pick, I'll lean the favorite de Freitas' way, but not even confident to the slightest bit in this one. In the next fight, in the heavyweight division, we have Junior Albini, who is 14-4, taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Man, that's one of the hardest names that has ever been on the Martian MMA program, I'll tell you that. Looking over at the opening betting lines, we have Junior Albini as the plus 100 underdog, Jairzinho Rozenstruik as the minus 140 favorite. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5 dimes right now. Rozenstruik is up to plus 100, and Albini is the minus 120 favorite. So a little bit of line flip in this one. I'm sure money is coming in on both gentlemen in this one. I've seen the line, go from minus 115 pick'em to minus 110, and it's going all over the place. So a lot of money coming in on both of these guys. It's a really close matchup. It's I think the closest bet. We have a couple pick'em fights on the card, but man, this is one of the closest matchups in this one. Junior Albini has had some UFC experience. He's, I believe, 3-1. Let's check his record out right now. He has wins over Tim Johnson. Oh no, he's 1-2. Excuse me. Yeah, off to a slow start for him. So he last fight he got Ezekiel choked on the feet from Alexei Olenek, a fight that that Albini was winning, and he somehow still managed to get choked on the feet with one of the most obvious submissions in jiu-jitsu. It's really amazing, especially because Alexei Olenek has 10 Ezekiel chokes before, and Albini was completely clueless to the choke coming on. So that really shows a lack of, knowledge in his opponents. I mean, if the guy has a bread and butter signature move and he tries that move on you and you have no idea it's coming, man, you're doing something really wrong, especially if you're a pro fighter in the UFC at this point. So, I really question his preparation. Albini, honestly, he fought Andrei Arlovsky, a guy who's 40 years old. It was, coming off of, I think Arlovsky might have broken his losing streak. I think he was on like a 4-fight losing streak, and he finally broke out of the mud with a win over Albini, if I'm correct. Let's pulling up his record right now. He was on a 5-fight losing streak, and he fights Albini, and he wins the fight by unanimous decision. So, man, Albini has been really underwhelming. He is, he's got some decent boxing. He's got, some power in his hands. He definitely, knows how to box. But he's going to be going against Rosenstruck, who is, a kickboxer. I think his record's like 75-6 or something like that. He's an absolute beast in kickboxing. But, that really, that sometimes does not translate well to MMA. You got those big 10-ounce gloves on. You're used to high guarding, or you're used to a specific type of defense. Then all of a sudden in MMA, those 4-ounce gloves, that defense doesn't work anymore. We saw that against Gokhan Saki, a guy with 100 kickboxing fights, one of the best kickboxers of all time, and he goes in there against an average MMA fighter, and he gets knocked out cold by a straight left hand. Some of these things just happen. So Albini could certainly clip Rosenstruck on the feet. I think Rosenstruck will be the better striker, though. I think he'll be using his kicks to keep Albini at range. But Albini is going to try to get this fight to the floor. Rosenstruck, being that kickboxer, his jiu-jitsu is clearly his weakness. He is really hopeless off his back. He was taken down by Andrei Kovalev, and they're fighting Ryzen. He was bad takedown defense. If this fight gets to the ground, I think Rosenstruck, it's pretty much over for him. He would either lose the round clearly or get submitted. But man, Albini does not have a good wrestling game. He has a decent clinch game where he can, push you against the cage and maybe go for a takedown that way. But man, he does not have much wrestling chops at all. He can maybe catch a kick from Rosenstruck. Who knows? There are a lot of things about this fight. Albini has started going to American Top Team, one of the best gyms in the world. So hopefully he has a little more coaching behind him in this one. But he's only been going there for a few weeks, so you really don't know if they had enough time to get comfortable with their new fighter and develop a game plan. They have dozens and dozens of fighters probably scheduled to fight right now. Let alone on the entire roster. So hopefully he's getting a good amount of attention over there. I'm going to pick Rosenstruck in this one, man. I just can't pick Albini. He's just too much of a wimp. He's wearing his diapers in the octagon. Like his shorts look like diapers. He's quite a character. But I'm going to pick Rosenstruck to get a knockout on the feet in this one. Next fight in the women's flyweight division, we have Mara Romero Barella, who is 11-5, taking on Talia Santos, who is 15-5. The betting line for this one opened up Talia Santos as the -210 favorite, Mara Romero Barella as the +160 underdog. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu, we now see Barella as the +145 underdog, Talia Santos as -165. So line margins have tightened up in this one. I'm going to agree with the line movement in this one. I think setting Talia Santos at -215 was a little bit too steep. Although I do think that Santos should be the favorite, I think that Barella has a good chance of winning this fight. Santos is looks like she's got a very kickboxing-oriented style. She's got really nice kicks, man. She's got power behind her kicks. Really nice leg kicks, too. And she really fights behind a jab. She uses teep kicks well. She's got a really solid, Muay Thai background. could be kickboxing too. Not really sure, but she fights in like a Muay Thai oriented stance. The only issue with Santos is that she has fought terrible competition. You look through this woman's resume, and all of her opponents 0-0, 0-1, 3-1, 0-0, 0-1. It's incredible. Most of her fights, she has 15 wins, right? 14 of her opponents don't have more than 5 pro fights. But to give her a little bit of credit, she did fight a woman by the name of Estefany Almeida on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, who was 7-1. And she did win that fight pretty convincingly. She beat her up on the feet, was, like I said, using her kick game, and she was able to take her opponents back, get a nice takedown, and got close to a rear naked choke, but Almeida showed some nice defense in that one and was able to escape. But she, looks like she's very well-rounded, is Santos, but, I've been, a little bit impressed by Mar Barella, honestly. She fought Caitlin Chukagian in her last fight, pretty experienced kickboxer Chukagian, a very good fighter of her own right, and Barella really hung in there. I was surprised. I was really expecting Chukagian to outstrike her easily, but Barella was in her face. She was trying to close the distance. She was throwing a lot of punches. She was being active. Looks like she had a good gas tank behind her. And she even, was chasing some takedowns a little bit for, trying to initiate the grappling. Wasn't too successful with the takedowns, though. She might have gotten her down. I wrote it down. She went for a takedown once. She got it, but she almost got triangled by Chukagian, who is a blue belt, I believe. She's a blue belt at Renzo Gracie's, which is one of the best jiu-jitsu schools in the world, but nevertheless, a blue belt. It's a little bit of a worrisome that she almost got triangled. I'm telling, it was close, man. She really got close to getting submitted. So I don't really know what belt Santos is in jiu-jitsu, although she does have a lot of a few wins by submission. I wouldn't say a lot. And she, like I said, she just showed some good grappling in her last fight with Almeida. So, I think this fight is, where the line is set at now seems pretty accurate. Although I wouldn't be surprised to see Barella pull off the upset in this one to get the dog win. But I'm gonna side with side with the favorite in Santos. I think she's just slightly more well-rounded, and I think that she will get the win in this one in a pretty fun fight. The next fight takes place in the welterweight division. We have Thiago Alves, who is 22-13, taking on Max Griffin, who is 14-5. Taking a look at the opening betting line for this one, Max Griffin as the -230 favorite, Thiago Alves as the +170 underdog. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.io, we now see Max Griffin at -200 to Thiago Alves at +170. So not much movement coming in on this one. I'm going to disagree with where it's set at. I think Thiago Alves is a much closer underdog than +170. I would really cap Max Griffin at maybe -130, but I could see it at being a pick'em at -120 for both gentlemen. I just really think this one's a close matchup. Max Griffin is a pretty well-rounded fighter. He has very good striking. He's also got a little bit of wrestling to go along with it. He took his opponent Curtis Melender down in his last fight in the first round, but wasn't able to get his takedowns going in the latter rounds, and lost that fight on the feet to the better striker in Melender in that one. But we've seen Griffin, outstrike Mike Perry pretty recently. He's fought some pretty good competition in the UFC. Colby Covington, Zaleski dos Santos. So he's hung with those guys pretty well. He had a close fight with Zaleski, a kickboxing match in that one. But Thiago Alves has looked really good lately, even though he's a very old veteran. He's been in the UFC maybe 12 years or something like that. If I scroll back on his record, let's see when his first UFC fight was. 2005. Holy shit. 14 years in the UFC for Thiago Alves. He let's see, he was knocked out by Melender in his second most recent fight. But he hung really well with Alexei Konchenko in that fight. Alexei Konchenko, a Russian fighter making his debut in Russia in that fight. A lot of people thought that he might have gotten a little bit of a hometown decision. But I thought Thiago Alves looked exceptional in that fight. He was, Konchenko was a pretty highly touted prospect, and Thiago came in and gave him a really tough fight. And Konchenko looked really good since then, beating Yushin Okami and everything with his really impressive wrestling. So I think that Thiago Alves' takedown defense is really good. I think that he will stuff the shots of Max Griffin in this one, and I think that the striking in this one is going to be close, man. Alves still has really good power. He's got great leg kicks. And I think this one's going to be a really close striking exchange on the feet. And I'm gonna pick Alves to win because I think Griffin will fade in the later rounds, and I think that Alves will just will outpoint Griffin in a kickboxing match. But plus 170 on Thiago Alves, that's great value right now. That line has been like that all week, and I really can't believe it. I've seen a lot of people on Alves. I think this is a good matchup for him, and I think it's a fight for him to win. So the pick is going to be the underdog, Alves, to get the win. The next fight takes place in the middleweight division. We have Marcus Perez, who is 10-2, taking on Anthony Hernandez, who is 6-0. The betting line for this one opened up Anthony Hernandez as the favorite at -245, Marcus Perez as the underdog at +175. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, Anthony Hernandez is currently -155 with Marcus Perez at +135. So line margins tightening up in this one. I agree with where the line has gone. I think the opening line was set a little bit too high for Hernandez. We've seen this trend happen a lot in the UFC lately. A guy who's looked really good on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, got a quick knockout or something like that. And then he comes into his first UFC fight as a pretty big favorite against a guy who's got some UFC experience. I don't know the official statistics on it, but I would happily side with the person who's got a little bit of UFC experience under their belt coming in against the newcomer. So Anthony Hernandez had a really impressive knockout of Jordan Wright on the Tuesday Night Contender Series, and then he was suspended for marijuana. I think he got like 9 months for having weed in his system, maybe less than that, maybe 6 months. But well, that. Ugh. Not even going to talk about that. So, luckily, he's finally getting a shot in the UFC in this one against a pretty scrappy guy in Marcus Perez. Marcus Perez is he's a good wrestler. I think he closes distance really well. He's able to negate people striking by pushing him up against the cage and trying to grind you out and get takedowns, get top position. So, I think that he will definitely be doing that in this fight against Hernandez. I think Hernandez is kind of a wild, powerful striker. He's definitely got some nice hands. I think that if this fight stays at range and Perez is not able to close the distance, he's got a good shot at winning this fight either by a decision or by testing that chin of Perez. But I think Perez can take a shot pretty well, and I think that he is pretty scrappy. He likes getting in grinding type of fights, and I think he's going to make that this type of fight. So I think that Hernandez could get uncomfortable in there really quickly. I think that the longer this fight goes, the better the shot Perez has at winning. I could see him getting a finish in maybe the second or third round if he's able to get top position and wear Hernandez out. Hernandez has never been out of the first round. No, he has one decision win. So, but I'm sure his cardio is not up to par with he's a first round knockout type of guy. So those guys always kind of rely on that knockout, and they don't really trust their cardio too much. So I think Perez, a guy who's been to the distance a lot in the UFC, I think that he will drag this fight out, and I think that he will get the win either by decision or late finish in this one. So the pick is going to be the underdog, Marcus Perez. Moving on to the main card of the night, we have Livia Renata Souza, who is 12-1, taking on Sarah Frota, who is 9-0. The betting line for this one opened up Livia Renata Souza as the minus 185 favorite to Sarah Frota at plus 145. The betting line is now Souza minus 220, Frota up to plus 180 on our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu. Man, I'm really surprised with where the line has gone in this one. I think that this one is much closer than what the line is set at now. I think that the underdog Sarah Frota in this one is a huge underdog to be looking at. She's both of these women are really, really similar. They both have powerful striking. They like to march forward, use pressure, make their opponents uncomfortable. They both have good ground games. They're both black belts in jiu-jitsu, so they like landing some powerful strikes on the floor, dumping you to the ground, landing some ground and pound, going for a sub. They're really similar. They're almost like carbon copies of one another. Two Brazilian women, really, really great records. They're coming in here with a lot of momentum. This one's going to be a really good fight. I'm really looking forward to it. Their styles are meant to clash. They're going to be trading blow for blow. These women hit hard. So you can watch some of their fights, even for women's strawweights, man. These girls hit hard. So I expect, honestly, Sarah Frota to be marching forward, landing the harder shots. I think she's a little bit better defensively than Souza. I think that's going to come in key here. I think that she's going to be, I think that when they get in that firefight of punches, which they will, I think Frota will pay a little more attention to defense, while Souza will let the emotion get the best of her. And the pick is going to be the underdog Sarah Frota in this one. And, plus 180, man, that's great value on the dog in this one. Next fight in the light heavyweight division, we have Justin Ledet, who is 9-1, taking on Johnny Walker, who is 15-3. The betting line for this one opened up Justin Ledet as the plus 280 underdog to Johnny Walker as the minus 400 favorite. Since then, live margins have tightened up. Looking over at 5dimes Sportsbook, our affiliated sportsbook, we have Justin Ledet at plus 175 to Johnny Walker at minus 210. So a lot of money coming in on Ledet since where the line opened up originally. I agree with that. I mean, I think it was set a little too high, minus 400 for Walker. But I really favor Johnny Walker in this matchup. Justin Ledet just really has not impressed me. He is 3-1 in the UFC, but man, his wins they look pretty. They're over some pretty low level competition. Chase Sherman, Mark Godbeer, and Zhu Anua. So, pretty low level competition as far as heavyweights go. And then he got absolutely mauled by Alexander Raychik in his last fight. He dropped down to light heavyweight, and then was just absolutely got the brakes beaten off of him. He does not check leg kicks very well. He does not get off his back very well. He does not defend takedowns very well. So he's got a lot of weaknesses. Does Justin Ledet? Ledet is a good boxer. He's got power in his hands. He's got a good jab. But even his boxing, his defense is a little bit suspect. I think he was getting tagged by Raychik with some really hard punches. He got really tired towards the end of that fight. So, Johnny Walker is, he's got great Muay Thai. He beat the shit out of Khalil Roundtree in his last fight, just showing off some crazy knees and elbows in that one. He's got a great, clinch. However, his defense and his chin are, a bit suspect. He's been knocked out in the, his earlier pro MMA days. And, he could definitely get caught with one of Ledet's power punches if he's not careful. So, even though Walker is, a Muay Thai specialist, man, the game plan is clear as day for this one. If he wants to win this fight safe, he would take Ledet down, grind him out for a couple rounds, and then maybe go for the finish in the third round or just win a decision comfortably. But I really don't expect Walker to do that. He is a madman. I think he will want to stand and trade in this one and try to get him Ledet out of there in the first round. But man, that would be risky. I still would favor Walker in a firefight because he's just so much he has more attacks. He's got better kicks, I believe, better knees, better elbows. He really uses all 8 of his limbs, while Ledet is really just a boxer. So if Walker chooses to chop down his legs, take down his opponent, I think that would be great. I think he would be, minus 900 if I knew he was coming in with a wrestling game plan. But the fact that he might go out there and get in that firefight and throw caution to the wind and entertain the shit out of us. I don't mind. That'll be great. But still, I'm gonna side with Walker in this one. Yeah, where the line is set at is right now is man. I think on Walker minus 210, that's pretty safe. I would really trust Walker in this one. I would be pretty shocked to see Ledet knock out Walker. He just for a guy whose boxing is his specialty, his hands just aren't really that good. He does not have many tools. So the pick is going to be Johnny Walker in this one. Next fight in the in the lightweight division, we have Charles Oliveira, who is 25-8, taking on David Tamer, who is 8-1. The betting line for this one opened up Oliveira as the minus 145 favorite, David Tamer at plus 105. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu right now, we see Oliveira as the minus 115 favorite to Tamer at minus 105. So really close fight in this one. There has been a ton of action coming in on this fight. At one point, Charles Oliveira was up to like plus 150. He got as high as plus 175 at one point. That's insane. So when the line came out as Oliveira was the favorite, a ton of money came in on Tamer and pushed him to the favorite. And then since then, an even amount of money has come in on both of them, and they're both sitting around to pick them right now. It just shows you how close this fight is. It's going to be a great one. Charles Oliveira, most submissions in UFC history. One of the best grapplers to ever, come in the sport. He's taking on David Tamer, one of the best strikers in the UFC right now. He's got incredible Muay Thai. He's a pro Muay Thai fighter before the UFC. He's got good cardio. He's got good takedown defense. He does a lot of stuff right. He uses his distance great to avoid striking. There are some guys who only their takedown defense is their kickboxing and how good they are at using range, and that Tamer is one of those guys. But it's gonna be very difficult for Tamer to keep Oliveira off of him. Oliveira is pretty relentless with his wrestling. He's got good wrestling for a grappler. So I think that he does have a good chance of getting this fight to the floor. It really just matters how good Tamer is at getting back to his feet. He is pretty good at getting back to his feet if he gets taken down. But we just have not seen much takedown or much of his grappling abilities in the UFC. We did see it in his last fight against Nick Lentz, a wrestler who was trying to take him down all fight, and he was able to avoid all that and win a decision pretty comfortably. So he could replicate that game plan, but I think Oliveira is a little bit better of a fighter than Nick Lentz. So this one's going to be wicked close. It really all matters where this fight goes. If it stays on the feet, I think Tamer will finish Oliveira. Oliveira does not really fare too well when he faces adversity. He usually, wilts at the first sign of, things not going right. So if he isn't able to get this takedown and he's getting butchered on the feet, I expect Tamer to finish him in maybe the second or the third round. But if Oliveira takes Tamer down, then I really it's gonna be difficult for Tamer to get back to the feet, and I see Oliveira getting the submission. So if I have to pick a side on this one, I'm gonna go with Oliveira. I just think he will get the. I don't think Tamer's takedown defense is good enough. I don't think his grappling is good enough to avoid Oliveira. Oliveira just submitted a black belt in Jim Miller, so it's going to be really, really difficult for Tamer to avoid the grappling in this one, and I will be pretty impressed if Tamer is able to pull off the win. So the pick is going to be Charles Oliveira. Next fight in the welterweight division, we have Damian Maia, who is 25-9, taking on Lyman Good, who is 20-4. The betting line for this one opened up Damian Maia as the minus 155 favorite to Lyman Good as the plus 115 underdog. Since then, a little bit of money coming in on Damian Maia, pushing him to minus 175, while Lyman Good is up to plus 155. Damian Maia, man, still chugging at the age of 41, taking on a much younger opponent in Lyman Good, Tiger Showman fighter Lyman Good. He's coming off of a very nice knockout over Ben Saunders. Damian Maia coming off of 3 straight losses against, 3 fucking killers, Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington, and Kamaru Usman, 3 of the best welterweights in the world. Just no slack in that one. Didn't get finished by any of them, though. He he is very, very hard to finish. The last time Damian Maia was finished was by Nate Marquardt around 10 years ago. So Maia is really, really hard to finish, but he takes a lot of damage. He again in that fight against Colby Covington, he was beaten within an inch of his life. If that fight went to the fourth round, it probably would have been stopped in the corner by Maia. He would not have been able to continue anymore. His face is a bloody mess. And Maia, his takedowns, he's one of the best best jiu-jitsu fighters in the UFC history. But man, his wrestling is just so lackluster. In his last 3 fights, he's 0 for 49 on takedowns. 0 for 49. That's like an infamous statistic at this point. He shot for takedowns 49 times, and all 49 times he was unsuccessful. So he's obviously going to be trying to get this fight to the floor. His striking is not very good. It's competent, but it's just not. Lyman Good will be the much better, crisper, more powerful striker in there. If this fight remains on the feet, I can see Good possibly testing that chin of Damian Maia and getting the finish, or I could see him just, outstriking Maia towards a decision, playing it safe, trying not to get taken down, which is much, much more likely, which is basically what, Usman did, basically what all 3 of his opponents did, just sprawl and brawl. Every time Maia shoots, sprawl, and then, try to land a couple punches in between, So I don't think Lyman will be throwing many kicks in this one, just as, that's an opportunity for Maia to catch a kick and end up getting this fight on the floor. He does throw a lot of good leg kicks, and he's got powerful kicks, but he has really good boxing. I think that Lyman Good could win this fight with his boxing alone. If his takedown defense is on point, I see Lyman Good winning this fight. And if Damian Maia is able to get the takedown in this one, I can see him controlling Lyman Good on the ground and getting that submission. So the pick, I'm gonna go with Lyman Good. I trust Lyman Good way more at this point in his career. It basically comes down to who has prepared better, Lyman Good's takedown defense or Damian Maia's takedowns. I'm going to go with Lyman Good, the guy who's came into the UFC much more recently. He's 33 years old, could be it looks like he's in his athletic prime, honestly, while Damian Maia is way past his prime, 41 years old. He could be fighting for his career at this point. 3 losses in a row, could be his 4th one. So I'm just going to side with Lyman Good. I'm going to trust him a little bit more, and the pick is going to be Lyman Good to get the upset. In the co-main event of the evening, in the featherweight division, we have Jose Aldo, who is 27-4, taking on Renato Moicano, who is 13-1-1. The betting line for this one opened up Renato Moicano -120, Jose Aldo -120, a pick'em fight. And right now, looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Renato Moicano at -140, Jose Aldo at +120. At one point, Moicano got all the way down to -180, and then he slowly crept up to 70, 60, 50, 40, 50, and now he's all the way at -140. So a lot of early money came in on Moicano, and a lot of the later money coming in on Aldo. I'm going to agree with the late money in this one. Where the line is set at now, I think is much more accurate. Shit, I would even really cap it at where the line opened up at -120, -120. This really seems like a pick'em type of fight. Maybe even Aldo being the favorite. I really think that Aldo isn't done yet. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. We saw him knock out Jeremy Stephens in his last fight with a wicked body shot. Heard around the world, one of the best knockouts of 2018. He didn't look perfect in that fight. He looked a little slow. It looked like he might have gotten caught with a couple of Jeremy Stephens' punches, but he still looked like one of the greatest of all time in there. And right when we thought he might have been in some trouble, he finishes the fight with a wicked body shot. Just shuts down Jeremy Stephens' liver. And Stephens was on a roll, knocking motherfuckers out coming into that fight, and Aldo went in there and stopped him himself. But Renato Moicano is one of the best featherweights in the world right now. He's a guy who's on the come up as one of the best featherweights, while Aldo might be on the come down as one of the best featherweights. But Moicano is, he's got a really good jab. He's got really good leg kicks. He understands range really well. He's got great striking. And, he's got really good grappling to go along with it. We saw him drop Swanson and choke him out with a really nice rear naked choke in the first round of his fight, his most recent fight. He's got, a lot of rear naked choke finishes. He's got, really good really good grappling, does Moicano. He's got wins over Jamie Stevens, Calvin Kattar, Cub Swanson. He's, like I said, he's one of the best featherweights in the world right now. It's going to be a really good fight. I think that, in terms of fight IQ, I give Jose Aldo the edge, honestly, by a lot. I think Moicano's fight IQ is actually one of his weaknesses. If you remember that fight against Brian Ortega, a fight he might have been winning, or he definitely was winning the first 2 rounds. Ortega, he shot for a takedown on Ortega and got his neck snatched, and he got guillotined in the 3rd round of that fight. So it shows that his IQ might not be the best, and his cardio might also not be the best. This is a 3-round fight. Luckily, though, if it was 5 rounds, honestly, I think Aldo would be much more of a favorite. Moicano never having gone 5 rounds, and Aldo training for 5 rounds for most of his career. So, I think this fight will be contested on the feet. I don't think Moicano will be trying to take down Aldo. I think Aldo's got some of the best takedown defense in the history of mixed martial arts. I think that they're probably both jiu-jitsu black belts on the ground too. So we really do not see Jose Aldo grapple much. So I'll be pretty shocked if this fight ends up on the ground. I think it'll be a really close stand-up exchange. I think that, Moicano will have to put on the best performance of his life. He will have to be, his leg kicks will be on point. His jab will have to be on point. He'll have to be, basically out kickboxing Jose Aldo, who is, one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. So that's going to be a tough task to tackle for Renato Moicano, which is why I have to side with my boy Jose Aldo, one of my favorite fighters of all time. I think that he will win the stand-up exchanges in this fight, and it's actually a 3-round fight. Might actually favor him a little bit at this point of his career because he's getting up there in age. He doesn't have to worry about going through 5-round wars. He's already gone through a lot of wars, as we know, so he could, compact that 5-round energy into 3 rounds and put on an action-packed performance. So I'm going to pick Jose Aldo to win this one, and I don't think he'll finish Moicano. I think it'll be a close, hard-fought decision that Aldo will slightly edge out. So pick is going to be Aldo. And in the main event of the evening, in the bantamweight division, we have Rafael Assunção, who is 27-5, taking on Marlon Moraes, who is 21-5-1. The betting line for this one opened up Marlon Moraes as the -215 favorite to Rafael Assunção as the +165 underdog. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5dimes.eu, we see Marlon Moraes at -165. Rafael Assunção is the +145 underdog. So these two gentlemen have fought before. It is a rematch. The last fight went down in June of 2017, so a little bit more than 18 months ago. And the winner of that fight was Rafael Assunção. People argued that it was a very highly disputed decision. If you look on MMADecisions.com, you actually have like 15 of 18 people scoring the fight for Moraes. Something I was pretty shocked by. I watched that fight today, and I really thought that Rafael Assunção won that fight pretty clearly. He was working a really nice jab in that fight. He landed a couple flush right hands that stunned Moraes at the end of the first round and at the beginning of the 3rd round. 2 of the most significant shots of the fight came from Assunção, excuse me. But that was Moraes' first fight in the UFC. He could have been a little bit conservative, a little bit nervous, going down to Brazil for his first fight. Taking on a fellow Brazilian, a lot of nerves come along with the situation. But since then, he's looked, great. He had a close fight with John Dodson. But, after that, he, went on to, knock out Aljamain Sterling in the first round with a wicked knee and knock out Jimmy Rivera with a head kick in the first round. So, he has got some of the best knees and kicks, honestly, in all of the UFC. He uses them to counter, which is great, where he loads the kick up, he's got it in the back of his mind, and he's just saying, wait until he throws that punch, and he's got it loaded up. Right when his opponent throws that punch, he's ready to counter with a kick. Instead of, countering with distance or counter with punches like most fighters do, he counters with knees or with kicks, which is what Donald Cerrone was doing against Alexander Hernandez in his last fight, which worked for him so successfully. He was timing that knee every time Alexander Hernandez came in. Cowboy had that knee loaded up, just ready to fire. So I could see that being very successful for Moraes in this one. It did have a good bit of success in the first fight, but Moraes was just a little bit too content to counter in that one. He wasn't really, trying to strike first too much. And I think when he was, Sun Sao was countering him and, getting the better of those exchanges. So I really had Sun Sao winning that fight pretty comfortably. He clearly won the first and the third rounds to me. And I think you could have even given a Sun Sao the second round, giving that fight 3-0 to a Sun Sao. So, I really wonder, maybe I should watch the fight more closely and I miss a couple things. But based on instinct, before I watched the rematch, before I watched the first fight, I was leaning Moraes' way. I just thought the momentum lately has been clearly in his way. He's gotten those 2 knockouts in a row, but if he didn't have that questionable decision to Rafael Assunção, this man would be on a hell of a win streak, something like 15-fight win streak for Marlon Moraes. But speaking of win streaks, Rafael Assunção in his past 12 UFC fights, the man is 11-1 or something like that. We got 4, 7. Yeah, he's 11-1 in his past 12 fights, and who has his loss to? The champion, T.J. Dillashaw. He's beaten really some of the who's who at featherweight. The dude is really, really impressive. So you really can't count Assunção out. He's one of the most consistent fighters in the UFC. Honestly, 11-1. That's not hard to do. That is not easy to do, and. He's beaten some really good strikers lately. Rob Font, who has looked tremendous. Aljamain Sterling. These Pedro Munoz. These are guys who are really good strikers and who are doing really well in the UFC right now. And Assunção beat them, unanimous decision. So earlier in the week, like I said, I think I was siding a bit with Moraes, but now at the current price, I really think that Assunção might have a little bit of value on him. He was up to plus 180 earlier in the week. That had value written all over it. I think Moraes should be a slight favorite in this one, maybe minus 140 to Assunção plus 120, but at plus 145 right now, I still think there's a little bit of value on Assunção. I hope this fight gets to go long. I was really looking forward to Jimmy Rivera and Marlon Moraes fighting it out in their last fight, but Moraes KO'd him within 30 seconds, so we didn't really get to see them battle too much. So I hope this fight ends up going to the decision. We end up seeing the best out of both gentlemen. I expect it to be a close fight, maybe 3-2 for the winner, but I'm going to side with Rafael Assunção on this one. And, the slight edge maybe to Moraes in cardio because he's been scheduled for 5 rounds now in back-to-back fights, so his cardio might be a little bit better. Assunção, I think this might be his first fight scheduled for 5 rounds in the UFC, so that'll be something to look out for, how his cardio holds up in the latter rounds. But this one should be a really good fight. It'll be a great rematch, and the pick is going to be Rafael Assunção to score the underdog victory in this one. Alright, and that will recap the UFC on ESPN Plus 2 card going down this Saturday night in Fortaleza, Brazil at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN Plus. With that being said, we are now going to transition to recapping the UFC on ESPN Plus card, the Bellator 214 card, and talk about the Nevada State Athletic Commission hearings with John Jones, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Conor McGregor. So stay tuned for all of that. Alright, we're going to start things off with recapping the ESPN Plus card, the first ESPN Plus card that went down on Saturday, January 19th, 2019, around 2 weeks ago. The event was great, honestly. I think we had 10 finishes or something like that. Let's see. Yeah, 10 finishes. No. 9 finishes, excuse me. So, just incredible from that perspective. We had Chance Rencounter submit Kyle Stewart in the first round. Nice wrestling and submissions from him. I knew Kyle Stewart wasn't very good, but man, he looked awful in that fight. Jeff Neal, outstruck Bilal Muhammad, almost finished Bilal Muhammad. Really, Muhammad showed some crazy toughness to stay alive in that one. But Jeff Neal is just looking, better and better every single fight. His striking is just getting crisper and more powerful and everything. Dennis Bermudez grinded out a tough victory, 2 rounds to 1 fight over Tate Edwards, and then retired in the octagon after that. Great performance from him, and nice to see him retire on a win. He went out on a pretty good note. He had a very good UFC career, and luckily he got that win before he could retire. And Tate Edwards just continues to look really lackluster. He, came into his first UFC fight as a -400 favorite, and now all of a sudden he's 0-2. We realize he's not very good at all. His cardio is bad, his grappling is bad, and his striking is a lot less powerful and precise as we thought. Corey Sandhagen scored a nice armbar finish over Mario Bautista. Alonzo Menafield knocked out Vincius Moreira with, I don't remember what it was. I think it was a punch. Moreira just was unable to get the takedowns in that one and got absolutely smushed. Joanne Calderwood defeated Aaron Lipsky. Really great performance from Calderwood. Came in as the underdog, was able to get top position and win rounds on top. Lipsky just looked really, really underwhelming. Don Cerrone scoring a head kick TKO over Alexander Hernandez. Just incredible performance from Cerrone. His striking was, so accurate. His counter striking, his knees, everything was just great. He was stuffing all the takedowns, and just one of Cerrone's best performances in the past couple of years, honestly. And it came against one of, his best opponents he's fought in the past couple of years in Hernandez. So, great performance from the Cowboy. Glover Teixeira came back from the dead after getting almost knocked out by Carl Robertson and was able to come back and finish him with a triangle choke or an arm triangle choke of his own in that same very first round. Paige Van Zandt was able to armbar Rachel Ostovich in a very exciting fight. She might have lost the first round of that fight, and then was able to secure the armbar in the second round of that fight that had a lot of good grappling exchanges, a lot of back and forth moments. Joseph Benavidez defeated Justin Ortiz via decision. A nice, 2 rounds to 1 victory for Benavidez. It seems like a rematch with Henry Cejudo will be next for him. I hope that fight gets made. It's definitely a deserving fight. Gregor Gillespie defeated Yancy Medeiros by TKO ground and pound in the second round. Just showed his incredible wrestling, incredible top control, and was able to wear Yancy down and get the finish in that one. In our co-main event and main event both had a little bit of controversy behind the stoppages. We had Alan Crowder win by disqualification because Greg Hardy kneed him in the face while he was a downed opponent. I don't really think it was intentional from Greg Hardy. I don't think he was looking for a way out. I think he was losing the fight and on his way to losing the fight, but I don't think he decided somehow an illegal strike to disqualify himself would be a good way to get out of the fight. So, all controversy aside, I think they should just do a rematch, honestly. Alan Crowder, I think, was on his way to winning that fight. Greg Hardy looked pretty lackluster. His striking did not look, very good. He was, just a very overhyped prospect, in my opinion. He, fought a bunch of cans in the beginning and knocked him out in the first round, but the second that, first blitz of cardio was gone, Greg Hardy was, a half of the fighter he used to be. So, nice performance from Alan Crowder. It's a damn shame he had to lose that way because I think he was on the way to winning the fight anyway. And in the main event of the evening for the flyweight championship, we had Henry Cejudo knock out TJ Dillashaw 32 seconds into the first round. Looked like the fight started off and TJ wasn't really respecting Cejudo striking very much. Looked like he was trying to feel his opponent out. And Henry, whizzed a kick right by his face and, And that's when you knew, like, Henry was game. He was, and it looked like right away, that first exchange, I was like, oh man, TJ is not respecting him at all. He's leaning forward. He's, he's just not really, like, prepared for Cejudo to be, blitzing him. Next thing you know, Cejudo lands straight left, clips Dillashaw, knocks him down. Cejudo lands a couple more punches, knocks Dillashaw down again, and then the last barrage of punches knocks Dillashaw down a third time in like the span of a few seconds, and then the referee stops in and stops the fight. I think it was a pretty well-timed stoppage. I definitely would not call it an early stoppage. I mean, the dude got dropped. He got knocked down, and then he got dropped 2 more times with some ground and pound. He was on his way to losing that fight, but I mean, I guess you could see how. I could see how you could say that it could have gone a little bit longer. Maybe because it was a championship fight, because it was champion versus champion, it was main event. It was a guy who had a wrestling background. I could see how you could let him take a little bit more punishment. It sounds a little bit silly, but the guy did train. It was 8 weeks for the fight. You should let him go limp or go out before you stop the fight. Even if it looks like he's out of it, he might be. Just let him take a few more punches so he doesn't have to complain about the stoppage anyway. Because let me tell you something, Henry Cejudo showed the fuck up for this fight. His striking was on point, and he knocked out TJ Dillashaw, but that is vastly overshadowed by this stoppage that everyone was talking about. He didn't really get an assertive, a victory or an assertive, outcome to this fight. Everyone's still talking about a rematch at, flyweight or at bantamweight. Where is the rematch going to happen? When's it going to happen? But I mean, none of that would have happened if the referee could have let it go another 10 seconds. Cejudo lands a few more punches, and then the fight is over and done with. But I would just like to see TJ go back to 135 pounds. I think this is just a failed experiment. I don't think he should have been cutting the weight. I don't think he really respected Henry Cejudo on the feet at all. It really got clipped for it. I think the weight cut, drained his jaw. I think it, if the fight would have kept going on, I think the weight cut, we would have seen the weight cut wearing on TJ, because TJ doesn't really get flatline like that very often, or doesn't get clipped like that very. I mean, maybe he does. He did get clipped by Garbrandt, and everything like that in the first round. So I'd like to see TJ go back up to 35, challenge the winner of Assunção versus Moraes, and then Henry Cejudo challenge Joseph Benavidez in that rematch. So no need for a rematch between these two, and great performance from Henry Cejudo. And now we're gonna quickly recap the Bellator 214 Fedor versus Bader card. Just talking about the top 4 fights on the card. Juan Archuleta and Ricky Bandejas had a really close fight. That fight really could have gone either way depending on how you score fights. I think Archuleta did the better work. He throughout the fight, he landed takedowns, was pushing the pace much more. But Ricky Bandejas landed a good amount of counter shots. He landed a lot of hard counters in this one. That really a really well-timed knee that really rocked Archuleta in the third round. Bandejas is really legit. Nevertheless, he's got real power in his hands. He's got good takedown defense, good scrambling abilities. He's really well-rounded. But Archuleta is also no joke too. So a great fight between those two. Jake Hager came in, former WWE wrestler Jack Swagger. Came in and wrestled some bum they found outside of a bar, and then arm triangled him. Good wrestling and submission from him. I hope to see him against a more legit opponent. Henry Corrales knocked out Aaron Pico. Aaron Pico, one of Bellator's most highly touted prospects. Gets a little overzealous after he rocks Corrales with a punch. Does not use his wrestling, some of his the best wrestling in all of MMA. Just decides not to use it. Goes for the knockout kill, but ends up getting clipped himself and knocked out cold by Henry Corrales. A huge upset from Corrales. He was something like plus 500 to Pico at -700. So very impressive knockout from Corrales. Huge upset. And in the main event, we had Ryan Bader win the heavyweight Grand Prix of Bellator, knocking out Fedor Emelianenko with a nice, like a check, not even a check hook, like just a hooking jab, really, that knocked Fedor down. Then he followed it up with, a nail in the coffin, a haymaker that's knocked out Fedor cold on the ground, busted Fedor up, made him bleed all over the place. So, pretty sad end to the fight. You get to have to see Fedor knocked out like that. He has been, knocked out 5 times in his career now. Or no, 4 times. Dan Henderson, Bigfoot Silva, Matt Mitrione, and now Ryan Bader. So, one of the greatest of all time fighters, well up into his 40s now. It's, I'd like to see Fedor just either go to Japan and start getting some TRT or some special supplements in him, or just hang the gloves up, because he's done enough for the sport and we don't need to see him knocked out anymore. So great performance from Bader, though. Really, what sucks that this dude left this UFC. He's really one of the best fighters in the world right now, and it's a shame that he's not in the UFC to fight the best of the competition. But still, he's getting paid over at Bellator. He's the double champ at Bellator, beat Fedor, and is now swimming in that money. So congrats to Bader. And we're gonna move on to the last bit of news. The Nevada State Athletic Commission held hearings for John Jones, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Conor McGregor all on the same day, actually. I believe it was 2 days ago, Tuesday, the 29th. But the results of those were Khabib Nurmagomedov receiving a 9-month suspension and a $500,000 fine, with an option to reduce the fine to the suspension to 6 months if he forms an anti-bullying video. And Conor McGregor received a $50,000 fine and 6 months suspension. I don't really know, I guess, really what for. I mean, he did swing on some of Khabib's teammates in the octagon, but those people were in the octagon to start drama. Conor was about to hop over the cage himself to go defend his team while Khabib was attacking them, and then one of Khabib's teammates runs up on the cage himself, and that's when Conor swung on him. So I guess that's what they punished him for, saying that Conor swung on him, and then I think he swung on Islam Makhachev too, or something like that. So he definitely swung on a couple people in the octagon, for the most part really defending himself. There was all that commotion going on in the octagon, all these people trying to get their licks in on Conor. Bunch of fucking savages trying to sneak attack a fighter who just had an 18-minute fight. They're just idiots. Abu Bakr Nurmagomedov and Zubair Tukhonov, both of them, they're fucking morons. They both got 1-year suspensions. Honestly, I think they should get a lifetime ban. The one dude jumped the fence and not in the corner. He ran in from basically a spectator, jumped the cage, and punched the biggest UFC star in history in the back of the head, bare knuckled a couple times. How the fuck do you get 1-year suspension for that? I mean, that's insane. They suspended Nick Diaz for 5 years for a failed marijuana drug test, and some thug jumps a cage of a pro fight after the fighter just had an 18-minute pro fight where he fought his heart out, took a ton of damage in that fight, and then he has to have some jackass hop the cage and punch him in the back of the head bare knuckle while he's not looking. I mean, that guy should never be allowed to step foot inside a Nevada State Athletic Commission event ever. That's Abu Bakr, or whatever his name is. Zubair, again, that guy should be kicked the fuck out of the UFC, never licensed again. He was bragging on social media after the fight. I promised I'd slap Conor McGregor, and I came through, I promise. Dude, you literally said you premeditatively planned to attack a fighter after their fight, and then you did it. And then you bragged about it, and then you're completely oblivious to the fact that you lost your job. He had a fight scheduled. That fight got canceled. And, you know, now he's suspended a year. He was already on a 2-year suspension for an anti-doping problem. Now he gets another suspension. You know, it would be a miracle if that fucking douchebag fought in the UFC again. And Khabib has the nerve to say that he's not fighting in the UFC until his friends' suspensions are over. So that's saying that, oh yeah, my friends, you know, attacked the fighter in the cage, attack the fighter in the cage after a fight, but it doesn't matter. I'm riding or dying for them, and I'm not fighting until their suspensions are over. They should have gotten lifetime suspensions. Khabib is so like naive to think that he is going to wait out their suspensions. He says he wants to fight in November. He was complaining so long, complaining about, you know, wanting to strip Tony Ferguson, wanting to strip Conor for not fighting, all this shit, and then he wins the belt, and all of a sudden he starts talking about fighting Floyd Mayweather, and he starts talking about not fighting for 13 months, doing the exact same things he was complaining about Conor McGregor about. So, I mean, you know, he's being really, really hypocritical about all this. He, you know, his manager is, you know, the fucking biggest slime ball in all of MMA, is saying that, you know, the suspensions for Zubaria and Abubakar are, you know, unjust. They're like, oh, all he did was assault a fighter after, you know, if Conor wanted to press charges, he could have gotten them arrested. Like, do you really not think that for an arrestable assault offense, you shouldn't get more than a year suspension? Who knows, man? They're all a bunch of fucking thugs, man. I'm not saying Conor and his team are some, you know, group of angels. They're fucking thugs too. They ran into the Barclays Center and threw dollies through windows and attacked buses and shit. That's criminal behavior. Just like it's criminal behavior to jump out of a cage after a fight and to sucker punch fighters after fights with your bare knuckles. All of them are acting like a bunch of criminals disguised as athletes or fighters. It's, you know, I'm not going to say it's a bad look for the sport because, you know, those two fuckers sold 2.5 million buys, and those fuckers generated $90 million worth of revenue for Las Vegas in one night or something like that. So, I mean, you know, how bad can it really be? You know, if it's doing well for business, you know, we know that the UFC will 100%, you know, just keep up with this behavior if it's good for business. And you know what's even more sickening is the fact that after all of these fines, the fact that he got fined $500,000, Khabib, the fact that all these he said he's going to be paying for his buddy's suspension. So something like Khabib is going to be paying $750,000 worth of suspensions. That makes me believe that Khabib is more likely to take this rematch with Conor just to make more money. Which I really don't want to see happen. I really don't want to see happen for a number of reasons, because Conor has better fights. He can fight Cowboy or Nate Diaz or Dustin Poirier or Max Holloway or Jose Aldo. I literally just rattled off 5 opponents, Justin Gaethje, Ali Quinta. That's 7 opponents where he would have better fights. You know, he would have a better chance at winning, and they would probably be more entertaining for fans. Or he could take this one fight, the worst fight out of them all, the fight that he's going to lose. You know, I really don't see how Conor beats Khabib. I really don't. You know, Khabib beat him in the grappling. He beat him in the stand-up. There's not really much to go on. So I really hope that rematch doesn't happen. It would be like my worst nightmare for that rematch to happen. You know, Donald Cowboy Cerrone called out McGregor after his last fight, and Conor said, "I'll fight you." He tweeted, said, "I'll fight you, Cowboy." So I mean, you know, both of them verbally agreed to that fight. I really, really hope that fight is next. I think that would be the most entertaining fight. It has the most personality, certainly between the two of them. You know, I think that Diaz and McGregor, the trilogy, that'll be, you know, that has a lot of personality behind it. But man, Cowboy, he can talk back. He'll talk that shit. He'll, you know, he'll create an entertaining stand-up fight, and it'll just be, you know, a fucking pleasure of a fight to watch. So really hope that Conor versus Cowboy is next. You know, Conor can fight again in, I think, April. So, you know, I really could see him fighting May, June, you know, sometime late spring, early summer, while Khabib might be waiting until, you know, fucking late fall or early December, which would be awful. So, I mean, 13 saying that you're gonna sit for 13 months is almost grounding for stripping, or at least another interim title for Tony Ferguson and Dustin Poirier, hopefully. So, and then the last piece of news on the docket, we had John Jones having his Nevada State Athletic Commission hearing. A bunch more steroid talk, a bunch more of, smoke and mirrors, a bunch more of, getting smoke blown up your ass. Who cares about all the anti-doping intricacies? They're so far behind. We moved past that. We know what's going on. There's, the UFC is protecting Jones. USADA is protecting Jones. I think that there's some shenanigans going on with, the California State Athletic Commission and the UFC and USADA. John Jones failed another doping test for the same trace amount metabolite. So, basically the same thing that they created all this controversy over removing the event. The same exact thing happened again. So who the hell knows really what to make of all of it? There's so much bro science. There's so much bullshit being spewed about like the half-life and how much picograms and how much of it dissolves in your body. I'm so over even talking about all that shit. It's all smoke and mirrors. All that we know is John Jones is licensed to fight in Nevada. His fight with Anthony Smith for UFC 235 on March 2nd is on. And we got ourselves a fight. That fight was announced weeks ago. We all thought it was official, but they still needed that license from the Nevada. So luckily he got it, and that fight will go on March 2nd. But other than that, I believe we covered every single piece of news for the past couple weeks. We have 9 weeks of UFC coming up in a row, I believe. So we will have 9 episodes of Martian MMA in a row. So keep posted for each new episode. Follow me on Twitter at UFOUFC.com, and check out our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu. The link to our affiliated link will be in the description of the YouTube videos or my Twitter. You can check it out that way. But this has been episode 47 of Mixed Martial Arts. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the fights this weekend. And ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, aliens, Martians, any conscious beings tuning into the podcast, I thank you for tuning into episode 47. And I will catch you guys next week. Peace.